This is the second book, written and illustrated by Gail Gibbons, Giant Pandas. What do you notice about the giant panda? What does the cover show about their food and size? So it's like they're eating some type of plant, and they look fairly large. Do you think this would be a made-up story or a non-fiction book? Why do you think that? Listen closely as Gail Gibbons describes giant pandas and where they live. She will tell you about their cubs and explain challenges to the survival of giant pandas. Remember to notice how she writes and illustrates the story. Giant pandas. Misty, thick clouds hang over the mountaintops. A large black and white animal makes its way through a bamboo forest. It is a giant panda. Giant panda. Giant pandas live in the mountains of China. The yellow is where the giant pandas once lived. Okay? The gold is where the giant pandas once lived. And then the red is where the giant pandas live today. The Chinese people call the giant panda Da Shuang Mao, meaning big bear cat. It looks like a bear and has long claws like a cat. So look carefully at the map that Gail Gibbons has drawn. It has a lot of information. Well, it gives you a lot of information. What type of information does this map give you? Also, look at page 3. Look at the words in the parentheses. This is a pronunciation for this word right here, which is Chinese. This word is in Chinese, and this is how you pronounce it. So sometimes if there's a word in another language in a book, I'll have the parentheses beside it to tell you how to say it. So it says the giant panda looks like a cat. How do you think the giant panda looks like a cat? Giant pandas are members of the bear family. Giant panda characteristics. Adult giant pandas are about 4 to 5 feet long and normally weigh about 200 pounds. Most of the time they move slowly, but if they want to, they can move at a fast trot. Their bodies are very flexible. So you see, this is labeled. The fur of a giant panda is thick and coarse and oily to keep the panda's body warm and dry. The fur is about 2 inches. So you see some labels here. Let's start at the front. So you have the eyes, the snout, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the neck, paws, claws, the back, fur. Underneath the white fur is pink skin, tail, scent glands, legs, stomach, and then it says here, underneath the black fur is black skin. Interesting. Let's look at this picture again. It says, look at the way Gail Gibbons made the illustrations on these pages. What details did she add to help you know more about what pandas look like and where they live? So what details did she add to help you know what they look like and where they live? Giant pandas have poor eyesight, but they have excellent senses of smell and hearing. In fact, pandas are hard to find in the wild because they can hide when they smell or hear people coming. Normally, giant pandas are shy and tend to stay by themselves. When they want to communicate with one another, they use about 11 different kinds of sounds. They bark, growl, squeal, and make other sounds to mean different things. So a bark means hello. Growling or snorting means I'm frightened. So Gail Gibbons says that giant pandas communicate by using different sounds. Why do you think the panda needs these sounds? Giant pandas also communicate by leaving their scent to tell other pandas they are in the area. They do this by rubbing a smelly liquid from glands under their tails onto rocks or trees. Thousands of years ago, giant pandas ate only meat, but over time their diet changed to mostly plants, mainly bamboo. Occasionally they eat grass, roots, vines, honey, or even meat. Occasionally means sometimes or now and then. What does this tell you about how often giant pandas eat food that isn't bamboo? It means they eat meat sometimes. Bamboo. Because bamboo is not very nutritious, giant pandas must spend between 10 and 16 hours a day eating it in order to stay strong and healthy. The average panda eats about 27 pounds of bamboo in a single day. Giant pandas have 5 claws on each of their paws, and they also have a special thumb on their front paws. They use their thumbs and claws to grasp the bamboo. So it says here the thumb is a rigid extension. And then you see their claws. Giant pandas use their big teeth and powerful jaws to crush and eat the bamboo stalks. They also eat the leaves. See their jaws and their teeth. Giant pandas can be playful and athletic. They do somersaults and climb trees quite easily. Also, giant pandas can swim holding their heads above water while they paddle with their legs. Giant pandas don't have a regular sleeping place. They sleep on the ground, in the base of a hollow tree, or wherever and whenever they feel tired. They sleep 2 to 4 hours at a time. Male and female giant pandas come together to mate in the spring. After mating, the male goes off on his own. The female makes a bed of bamboo, twigs, and grasses in a cave or among rocks or in a hollow tree. This place is called a den. In the autumn, about 5 months later, the mother panda gives birth to 1 or 2 babies called cubs. Immediately after giving birth, she begins nursing one of the cubs. A mother will raise only 1 cub at a time. Only 1 will survive. In their natural habitat, mothers usually give birth every 1 to 3 years. So a habitat is where an animal lives in nature. So young giant pandas are called cubs. Do you see the little baby? A cub is very small. It weighs only about 3 ounces and is about 6 inches long. The mother is about 900 times larger than her cub. It's amazing how gentle she can be. So look at the size of the baby and the mother. What do you think about that? It's the baby, the mom. The cub has pink skin all over and some fuzzy white fur. Its cry sounds like a human baby. The mother holds her cub almost all the time. She won't leave to get food for herself for about 1 week after her cub's birth. In about 40 days, the cub opens its eyes. It has its black and white markings and is still helpless. When the mother wants to move her cub, she gently picks it up by its neck and carries it from place to place. At about 4 months old, the cub is able to crawl. At 7 months old, the cub can run and climb trees. It weighs about 20 pounds and has learned how to eat bamboo. At about 2 years old, the young giant panda weighs around 120 pounds. It has learned all it can from its mother. Now it is time for the young panda to live on its own. In another 2 years, it will be able to have its own young. Over the years, the number of giant pandas has become smaller because of the destruction of their natural habitat by people, accidental deaths and traps set for other animals, and the hunting of pandas for their fur. Because of their size, adult giant pandas have few natural enemies, except for people. Around 1900, there were about 65,000 giant pandas living in the wild. Today, there are fewer than 2,000. The people of China are trying to protect them. They have set aside large areas called reserves where giant pandas can live safely. Also, it is a crime to harm or kill a giant panda. So what do you know now about giant pandas and the survival of this species, or kind of bear? Survival means continuing to exist or live as a species or a type of animal. So what do you know now about giant pandas and how they and their survival, which means how they live, or the ability to live? It's quite sad. In China and in a small number of other countries, scientists are trying to help increase the population of giant pandas. These pandas are cared for in captivity. The scientists try to encourage the pandas to give birth and care for their cubs. When the young giant pandas are capable of living on their own, some of them are released back into the wild nature reserves in China. Others are placed in zoos. Whenever there are giant pandas in a zoo, people love to come see them. They look like big, chubby, black and white teddy bears that are very playful. It is so much fun watching them. Giant pandas are one of the rarest and most appealing animals in the world. Pandas, pandas, pandas. For years, scientists disagreed on what scientific family giant pandas belong to. Now it is agreed that they are members of the bear family. The biggest giant panda that was ever weighed was almost 400 pounds. In 1 year, a giant panda may eat about 10,000 pounds of bamboo. A giant panda can live to be 25 to 30 years old. Today, about 150 giant pandas live in captivity. It is difficult for scientists to breed and raise them, but they are learning more every year. China began trying to breed giant pandas in 1955. In September 1963, Ming Ming became the first cub born in captivity. There are only a few zoos outside of China that have giant pandas. All pandas living in zoos are given two names, a Chinese custom that indicates love and affection. In 1972, China gave two giant pandas, Ling Ling and Xing Xing, to the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. In 1936, Su Lin became the first giant panda to be brought to the United States. He was a popular attraction at the Brookfield Zoo in Brookfield, Illinois. Beginning in January 2001, people lined up to see Tian Tian and Mei Xiong at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. They had been flown there from Wulong Giant Panda Research Center in China on a special plane called Panda 1. They were loaned for 10 years. Okay. So, what are some things that Gail Gibbons taught you about giant pandas that Gail Gibbons taught you about giant pandas that you did not know before? And what are you still wondering about? Think about what giant pandas eat. Gail Gibbons describes how the diet of giant pandas changed over time. What do you think about that? And why do you think that happened? I'm going to share with you one of my theories. I think it's because giant pandas can be really big, right? Bamboo is a plant that grows really, really fast. And there can be a lot of it. So I think that giant pandas, they developed an appetite for bamboo because it grows faster, and I would say it's easier to find than some grasses, roots, vines, honey, and of course meat. So I think maybe that might be it, but who knows? Why do you think Gail Gibbons wants you to understand about giant pandas? Let's look at this diagram of the parts of a giant panda. So giant panda characteristics. So notice how Gail Gibbons adds a label for the panda's mouth and divides these illustrations into different sections. Why do you think she made the choice to do the illustrations in this way? So let's look at this too. Why do you think she did the illustrations in this way? How do these details add to your learning about pandas? Let's get back to the characteristics of a panda. What do these diagrams tell you about a giant panda?